Are you ready for National Black Girl Month? April is National Black Girl Month, and this year we're centering Black motherhood. National Black Girl Month is a call to celebrate, invest, and champion Black women and girls. Join the movement and spread the spark. Visit nationalblackgirlmonth.com. Welcome to Impact Innovators with Felicia Ford, where we dive into the strategies that empower changemaker brands to leave a lasting legacy. Think of this podcast as your audio playbook for meaningful action. What's possible when thought leaders, disruptors, and pioneers align to share their journeys? I'm Felicia Ford, your host, bringing together the brightest minds and the most groundbreaking ideas to help you drive change, navigate through the sticky stuff, and elevate your brand. Whether you're tackling funding hurdles, looking for growth strategies, or seeking the perfect balance between profit and purpose, we've got you covered. Stay tuned and be a part of a movement that's setting new benchmarks in how we think about progress, community, and doing. Let's innovate, impact, and inspire. In the words of Dr. Rikesha, hey, Black girl. Hey, friends. Hey, changemakers. Welcome back. I'm, again, always excited to come back to this conversation with you. I again have my friend, Dr. Rikesha Fry-Brown, co-hosting with me. And today we have another special guest. They say Black women are strong, resilient, built to endure, but who decided that being everything to everyone should be our baseline? When the world keeps piling on expectations to be the perfect mother, the ideal partner, the high achiever, the problem solver, who gives us permission just to be? The truth is, the Superwoman title comes with a cost. And Asia Whitted knows this better than most. A mindfulness coach and founder of Pause with Asia Renee, Asia teaches high-performing women how to step back from burnout, prioritize their well-being, and create a space for calm in their daily lives. Her work has been featured in CEO Mom Mag, Dallas Weekly, Bold Journey Magazine, and Shout DFW. And as a TEDx speaker and organizer, she is redefining what it means to lead with intention. But before she started helping women reset, she had to learn how to do it herself. She had to unlearn the idea that rest had to be earned, that peace was a luxury, that setting boundaries meant she was letting someone down. So in today's special episode for National Black Girl Month with Dr. Rikesha, we're sitting down with Asia to unpack this Superwoman Syndrome, why so many Black women feel the pressure to be everything to everyone, and how that pressure leads to burnout, and what it looks like to reject that title and to reclaim some peace and balance, and I would say indulge in all of the luxury. Asia, welcome.
Thank you so much. I want to take you in that whole intro and just be because that is literally, I've never heard someone craft it the way, because that was literally what I had to do. I had to unlearn and unlearn it for myself. And then unlearning it myself, I started to recognize how it was showing up in my friends and my sisters and my community, and seeing how that need was definitely there, especially for Black women.
Well, I'm glad you're here because Rikesha will tell you that she's the one telling me to sit down, calm down, go to bed, get off the computer. And I welcome it.
I almost sent you a message last night.
We
I knew you were.
We need people in our circles that are going to tell us that, because it's hard for us to sit down.
It is. And I'm not even going to kid you. It happens. But your work has been about helping high achieving women such as myself create this space for calm. So, what was your personal turning point? When did you realize the pausing was nice, but not just nice, but necessary?
Nice but necessary. So I would say for me, and it's funny, it came at a time when everyone was having to reshift and refocus, back in 2020. And that year, as we were all walking through a global pandemic, and for us who were parents, we were being homeschoolers, we were chefs, we were making meals 3 times a day with snacks. It was crazy. I did not want to, I love to cook. I didn't want to cook that much. I'm not a school teacher either. So it was all those things. But then on top of all of that, I always tell people, it was the best of times and worst of times. That year I lost my grandmother. my grandfather, and both of them within a 2.5, 3 month span. They were back home in North Carolina. So that was January. And then January, March, I lost my half brother. But also at that time, me and my family, we moved into this beautiful high rise. It was luxury. We loved it. I was doing some consulting. I started at a new position. I gave my TED talk. But it was all these highs, but also all these lows. And when you're someone who performs and you're that overachiever, you just keep going. So life is going to throw something. You're like, okay, I'm throw that in my back, but I'm just going to keep going. And what it looked like, I have always been, I tell people I'm the person I've always been, but now I'm a little more aware. So I've always been someone who loves to journal. I've always been someone who loves to just get quiet. But it was something that just wasn't ever done with intention. And so one day I was feeling very overwhelmed. It was just everything was going. So I'm working full time. I'm still working with clients, consulting in eye care. And so kids are home, and I was like, you know what? I just need a break. I just need a break. I've been looking at y'all all day. Husband, I need a break. And I went for a walk, and I remember stopping and sitting down, and I broke down crying. Could not explain it. Just, it was so much overwhelming emotion and so much load that I felt like I had been carrying. And people ask you, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. I'm great. I'm doing okay. And it was this load, and I felt like I just broke open. Now I'm in the middle of a park, no sunglasses. Everybody's outside. It is quiet. So I'm just like, I need to get it together. So now I'm like, where's the quickest place I can walk where nobody sees me? So I walked until I got myself together, because of course I don't need to go back in the house looking like this, because I can't even explain what's going on. So now I'm like, all right, have this little bit of emotion, but we're going to tie it all up, put it back in, stuff it back down, and then go. And that was the first inkling. And I remember I had a friend, she's a clinical psychologist. And thank God for professionals. Yes. That's what Keisha's like, yes. And she was like, hey, she was like, friend, you've had a lot of loss. There's been some good things, but maybe you should just talk to somebody about the grief. Let's just start there. And so I was like, maybe it took another day, getting ready, cooking dinner, and just getting that same overwhelmed feeling, and like going in my bathroom and a little bit of a very literal slide down the wall, like crying again. What is this? Because this is not me. And I remember we were on session 2. We did through the first assessment. I was like, we're going to talk about grief. I think that's it. And she stopped me, another woman of color. And she was like, what do you do for yourself? How are you taking care of yourself? How do you show up for you? And I started rattling off these things. And she's like, that's for your husband. Actually, that's when you're serving at church. That's actually something you do for your kids, but you enjoy it. What do you do uniquely for yourself? And I was like, I could not answer. She said, when was the last time you just allowed yourself to do nothing? Also could not answer. And so it took us working through what I thought was grief and working through that, but then also working through, she was like, you are not going to take care of yourself. She said, you were burned out. And what's going to happen is all the things that you're carrying, she said, the only thing that you're letting go of right now is yourself. She said, and all of these emotions that you're feeling, she said, if you do not address them, they're only going to snowball and get bigger. She said, so right now she said, you're not clinically depressed. You don't have a anxious, I wouldn't diagnose you with any type of anxious disorder. She said, but where you're going this road is not healthy. You cannot take care of everyone until you take care of yourself. And so it took a long time of me sitting down and being like, okay. And so it was kind of my come to Jesus moment. And then so I had to work through that. And so I took 2 years of, okay, in the mornings when I get up, I don't have a lot of time, but what can I do and be intentional about that time? How can I check in with myself before I wake everybody up and check in and take care of them? And then in 2022, my dad passed unexpectedly. And I was like, okay, we're going to brace. But because I had those tools in my toolbox, I was ready. Now, that does not make it feel like it was not hard, because it was a harder season of my life. But I was able to walk through it knowing that I had these tools. And so it was just that realization of, if all these things I'm carrying, everybody I'm trying to take care of in these little pockets, if I crumble, what happens to all of those responsibilities? And I think that's the thing that we fail to realize, is while we're trying to hold everyone else up, that if we fall, we drop everybody else. And we're so worried about, I don't want to disappoint this person, or I need to show up. I need to be that person who's always available, but you have to be available to you first. My self-care allows me to serve others. And that's my biggest like motivation. If I'm really intentional about wanting to serve and take care of others and be a servant leader, I've got to take care of myself first.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that the culture shows us or embeds in us is that the notion that if I fall, then everything falls. And my only pushback on that is that a lot of those things that we think will fall apart if we fall, they'll keep going. They will figure
Right.
out how to make it. And then we will be the ones that are broken, burnt out, and, bent over. And
Yeah.
everything, the rest of the world will keep going. And so I think that it's knowing which of the things we're actually responsible for keeping up and which of the things it's just nice for them for us to keeping up. Right. That there are some things that if I fall, no one else is going to mother my son the way
Right.
that I'm going to mother my son. He only gets one mom. Are there other people that will be there to take care of him? Absolutely. But there's not another me. But my job, if I
It was a
disappear
hardship.
today, they're going to find somebody else to do this job by the end of the week or next week. Will it be a hardship for them? Sure. I'm really good at what I do. And I don't think anybody else could do it better than me, but someone else can still do that work. And so
Right.
I think my only pushback is that there are some things that we have to hold up, but there are some things that we're holding up that really we don't have to. And if other people were holding them up, or if we let them go, we give other people an opportunity to hold them up, and we relieve ourselves of some of that stress as well.
And that's a mindset shift. That's good, because that is something I think in this season I'm having to learn, even in volunteer spaces, of things where I'm like, oh well, they always require me, or they're always looking to me to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
then it took a space of just being like we moved and just getting to be like, hey, I am at capacity, and realizing that when I got out of that space, someone else showed up, someone else stepped up.
Yep.
And it also teaches me to know, like, maybe I'm impeding on their growth because I'm always covering, I'm always showing up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, say, I think I'm gonna add that. Keep working on that. You don't have to take care of everybody.
Not at all. I'm over here shaking my head like no, because I'm hearing you, and I'm sure that there are lots of others, which is why you're here. It's to talk about the Superwoman Syndrome, and I'm going to step back a few steps. Number one, when we put out the call for guests for this particular season of National Black Girl Month special episodes, out of 20 people, I would say 16 of them wanted to talk about Superwoman Syndrome. And
Wow.
yes, and I said to Dr. Rikesha, I was like, listen, there's something else here. I don't know who else is talking about this, right? And I'm going to reference back to one of our other guests, Dr. Michelle Height, who was like, I don't want to be on social media. I don't need all these followers. I don't, right? And I'm in a bubble. Am I present? Yes, my business requires that of me. But am I scrolling? No. Do I know what's happening in pop culture right now? No. Am I ascribing to some of the things? I couldn't even participate in some of the conversations about some of the recent events because I don't know what's going on. I have no clue. But you just talked about how, and in Rikesha's reflection about how sometimes it's embedded in our brains that this is what we must do. And so I'm sure because of the popularity of this topic, of others wanted to come to this platform to discuss Superwoman Syndrome. What are we doing as Black women? How are we even, where are we getting that from?
I think it's something general, like generations has been passed down. So for me, and I think I've been really reflective because I watched it. So when I lost my grandmother, I was really close to her. So as a little girl, I would be over there. I would hang out with her everywhere she was going. You were going to see me. I was a little shadow, anything she was doing. But she was the person who took care of everybody, and she would never take care of herself. So I remember an instance where her sister had got really sick. And so by this point, I was in high school. And so I'm driving, and I would go after school. I would go visit, go check in with her before I would go home. And I remember like calling and being like, hey, mama, I'm on my way. And she was like, oh, well, I'm at the hospital. Oh, okay. Well, you just told me you were tired yesterday. You were at the hospital yesterday with Aunt May. And she would literally just go there. And she would every single day until her sister got well. And the probably within that next week, she was in the hospital herself. And it was just that she was just not taking care. Her body was signaling that she needed to rest. Her body was guilt telling her, hey, your numbers aren't looking good. Hey, what was the last time? Are you eating? So all those things that she was ignoring, and she was just doing it at the cost of, I'm taking care of my sister. I'm being there. And her presence was important, but so there were nurses there. Her sister's children were there. Her other siblings were there. So she didn't have to be there, but she felt it. And so for me, I felt like I caught that, and it was a learned behavior. And so I did not realize how much of that learned behavior I caught from her. And then also from my dad. My dad was a person, he was a police officer, but he always had these other things he was doing, like all these little side hustles. And he would be the person who'd be like, oh, I just need a couple hours of sleep. I'm just going to he would call it, I'm going to shut down and then I'm going to be good to go. And then but he still made time for me and my mom. We still took family vacations, but I never stopped and wondered, like, what did he feel like physically? Where was his mental space? Because, we're not also taught to ask those questions. And it took maybe me getting into my 30s, and then my dad starting to call me around 10 p.m. every night. What are you doing? Oh, well, I'm doing, yeah, you need to wind it down. You need to go to bed. And I was like, why? And he was like, yes, just because you saw me do it didn't mean it was healthy. And I was like, and he was like, I know you saw it, but that's not what I want for you. He said, because now I am tired. I was tired then. He said, you're not going to be able to sustain it. And so a lot of times when I'm working with clients or I'm speaking, I say, are you running at a pace that you can sustain in 5 years from now and feel good about it? And not be resentful. Because that's the other thing. A lot of the people that we watched, they were holding a lot of resentment and bitterness because those places they were showing up, they didn't want to. They were doing it out of obligation or people pleasing or just feeling like they had to. Not that they got to, they had to do it.
And this is a great segue as you're talking about the work that you're doing with your clients. In your work, what are some of the biggest signs that you see that someone is trapped in the Superwoman syndrome, whether they realize it or not?
So I would say, and for me, what I'll do is when I'm working with someone, I will give them assessment, and I talk about burnout a lot. And so I see that because they may not even recognize they're in that space. And for most of the times, they don't even realize they're at risk of or on their road to burnout. And so what I'll ask, are you able to take time for yourself without feeling guilty? That's a big one. Are you doing your responsibilities, but are you doing it with this sense of resentment? I'll ask that too, because are you finding enjoyment in the things that you're doing? Because the way we show up is very important. We may just think, oh, well, I'm just frustrated at this time. But no, maybe that's a symptom. And a lot of times, what we'll do, and I'll use this analogy of a car. If you're going on a trip, you're always going to check, how much gas do I have in my tank? We don't do that for ourselves. And so we just keep running until we get to empty. And then we're like, oh, maybe I need to take a self-care day. But you probably should have took a self-care day like a year ago, 6 months ago, or you should have been doing these small practical routines and habits daily so you're not allowing yourself to get to this empty place. And I think for us, especially as women, especially as Black women, we don't take that time to even listen to our bodies. Our bodies are cueing us, our mental health is cueing us, all of our emotions. We have to look at those indicators and those warning lights that are flashing. And so that's where we start.
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, and I love that, number one, having a co-host as a part of the podcast, because it allows me to get a little bit deeper in my active listening. But I'm even reflecting on my experiences with burnout and my experiences with health related or stress induced health issues,
Right.
and listening to, when Dr. Rikesha was saying earlier about what she would push back on, and your response of, that mindset shift of Superwoman syndrome. We're not really, and you shared your parents did what they did and your dad did what he did. And I love that he called you and was like, go to bed. Stop.
It was right before he passed. It was probably a year. I would say a solid year of that time of like go to bed. And I will tell you now, it became so I'm so used to it. So
Mhm,
around that time now, he's passed, but I will still think
mhm.
like, okay, oh, daddy, I know, I got to wrap it up. I need to go to bed
Right,
because
right.
where I work, I'm on at 6 a.m.
Mm,
I need to get my rest. And he was like, yes, I did it, but it wasn't a healthy habit.
right.
Um, and so and for me too, one of the big things that I do for myself is if I don't make that choice for myself, I have to remember that everything that I am doing is a model for my children.
Mhm, mhm.
The way I'm showing up, the choices I am making, are these the choices I also want my children to make?
Right.
And I feel
Right.
like for mothers, that will stop us dead in our tracks
Yeah.
because that was what really showed up for me. A moment when my daughter was overwhelmed with things and she was trying to do so much. And I was like, baby, it's okay. You're not letting us down if you do. She's like, well, you do it.
Mm.
Okay. Well, back to the drawing board. Let's go journal this out and process what we need to like reassess.
Mhm.
And sometimes like our children are those mirrors that we need because we think we're doing all these things and they're like, oh, some of the times we are the problem. The things they're learning is because of us.
I think about people who are in we're going to say the self awareness, self care space, personal growth, personal development. And some people's work is rooted in research, some people's work is rooted in their experience. Um, and when I worked in mental health, we had a different way of framing the conversation around self care. And I would say when it became this internet craze buzzword, it was, oh, this is, go get your nails done and get your hair. It was just a term that was just
Right.
thrown at people, right?
Yes.
There are some actual physical benefits of taking a hot bath, but it's not just, there's a lady on TikTok, and no shade to the lady at all. She will go in her bathroom and she has her candle and she even has her little sippy cup. I call it a sippy cup. It is not a sippy cup, but it is a cup.
That's a tact right there because I
I
just took
was
a
like,
sip out of my
No,
cup.
okay, this is a
and I
full
have
adult.
I call my own a sippy cup because I have a strong. She takes her sippy cup in the bathroom. That was my reaction one day. And but no, the hormone rebalance that happens when you immerse your body in water is a
Right.
real thing, right?
Right.
But for people who don't or haven't yet grasped this, they see self care as an activity instead of a way of being. How do we help people? And I'm asking you both this at the moment because Dr. Rikesha is the hey black girl, but I feel like this is so important for us right now because when you're in your late 30s to early 40s, the hormones that be hormoning are not the
Woo.
same. You can't be
They're
doing all
not.
of that.
They are not.
You can't be doing all of that.
Right.
And because the adrenaline and the cortisol and the whatever else are going to be woo up here.
We are doing this.
Yes. Yes. And this is why so many other hormonal things come into play and other health issues come into play for Black women specifically in this time is because I really do. I mean, there's research and I don't have it here, but what can we do to go from self care as an activity to, no, this is my life. This is my being. I only have one body. What
Right.
can I do to be a better steward of who I am in light of you talked about the grief, the the joy, the excitement. You talked about the ups and like there's things are going to continue to happen, but what do we do to move from self-care the activity to this is my lifestyle, this is my way of being.
Right. One thing I will say is, and I am of the same notion where I feel like sometimes when I use the word self care, I get very like, I cringe a little bit because, like you said, it's just been tossed out there. Those things are valid, but they are also activities. And when I talk to women, especially, I want us to think about those things that we can do internally. When I ask someone, like, what does your self care look like? What are your boundaries? Do you have boundaries? Is there emotional awareness? Do you just check in with yourself? Because my check-ins in the morning, like, hey, Asia, how you feel? Take a deep breath in the morning. Where are you today? How are you feeling? Because sometimes we just get up and we just go and we never check in and like assess where we are and identify where we are and put language to those feelings. That is a big tool for self-care for me. And thinking about versus an activity, making it, like you said, a lifestyle or a habit. If there's one thing I can do for myself, good for myself, whether that's a balanced meal, if that's drinking my water, taking my vitamins, that is self care in a holistic way and doing it every single day. I'm drinking my water, making sure I'm in good environments with good people and setting boundaries.
Mm.
On my channel, we talk a lot about talking about teaching people all of the domains of self-care and not just the physical aspect of self-care, because a lot of when we think about social media buzzwords, what we see is what can be pictured, right? What we can take a picture of and post. And so going to the spa, I take a picture of the sign, I take a picture of my robe, and then I go and do whatever this is. And so instead of just doing that part, we want to be looking at all of the aspects that excuse me, are included in our self-care, to include, like you said, what we're eating, whether or not we're sleeping, what we're doing with our relationships, the social interactions that we're having or choosing not to have, placing boundaries around those things. And so when we're thinking about self-care, we're looking at it and teaching people that self-care is so much more than just the tangible things that we can see about getting our nails done. Because there are a lot of people with really nice nails who are very unhealthy, they're very unhappy, and they're very unwell. There are people with really nice hair that are very unhappy, very unhealthy, very unwell. And so it cannot just be about what we're doing on the outside, because your body might feel great from that massage, but your heart might still be broken and your mind might still be messed up. And so we want to encourage the holistic, the totality of self-care when we're talking about self-care, and encourage educating one and encouraging people to take the steps to look at themselves from a holistic manner. Because sometimes that burnout, the way you described your own experience, and I can talk about mine, from, you were having so many highs and yet you were overwhelmed and emotional about things that were not seen. They weren't tangible. They weren't the postable things. It wasn't the things that people look for and say, oh, but she's doing such a good job. But I'm miserable about this. And this thing, just because it's 1 out of 10 things, doesn't mean that this one thing is not still big, right? My hurt still hurts me. And you don't get to determine for me if this hurt is big or small. It is a hurt for me. It is a challenge for me. It is a whatever. And that's part of our self-care journey, to understand and acknowledge that what we are experiencing across the totality of our being matters.
Right.
And we can't only focus on the things that are good and ignore the things that are bad, or only focus on the things that feel good and ignore the things that are bad, because we don't like people who are always only focused on the negative. Right. We all know those people that are bleeding all over social media, and you like every time you see them, they got something negative going on. Well, if we pretend that we are the opposite of that, we're just as guilty. We're just as guilty. Life is full of highs and lows, and it is in the and that we do our best living. We have to be able to acknowledge both of those things and keep the highs high, but bring the lows up when we can. So
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see, and I remember saying something in one of my emails to my community about Black women and us preparing for National Black Girl Month. And I talked about how much economic power, buying power Black women have, even if they're married, how many of married Black women have this purchasing power. And if you look at certain industries that target Black women, I mean, the hair care industry, the beauty industry, and I don't know the statistics on that industry in particular, but I also looked at nonprofits in urban areas, and I looked at other types of service-based businesses. But the people spending the most money in some of these spaces were Black women. And I wish I had that number with me right now. I don't want to arbitrarily say what it was, but it was billions of dollars. Okay. if we are spending so much money on the external, and this is, I don't want this to turn into a panel where I'm interviewing you and Dr. Keisha, but I'm just thinking about what both of you said. Both of you mentioned the holistic perspective of taking care of ourselves and looking deeper than the surface. If we look at the amount of money that Black women are pouring into this economy for their external selves, and then we see the amount of burnout, the amount of pain that they're still walking through by themselves. What can we do as a sister, a mother, a cousin? What can we do for that Black woman just to let her know that it's okay? Because there's a lot of guilt, tied to slowing down. I personally will say, and I'm not saying this as a mother of biological children, but my guilt of slowing down more so is, well, who's going to do it if I don't? Right? What you all referenced earlier. And I know I'm not alone in that, but for some Black mothers, they may think the same thing. If I don't do it, then who will? Dr. Rikesha said, no one can mother my child like I can mother my child. So maybe we don't have an answer for that, but I think that even opening up the space to have that conversation may be the thing that plants a seed in someone's head to say, oh wait, let me pause, right?
Right.
Let me pause with Asia to see. So what do we say to the mother who's feeling responsible for everything and moving past the guilt? How does she give herself permission to pause?
For me, I would say what I've noticed is that example leading first, modeling that it can be done. One thing I have been so inspired by was even I do something. So during the middle of my workday, I always go take a walk. It's like my bookend. Clock out, I go for a walk, and that is my reset time for me to whatever happened in the morning, dealing with whoever I was dealing with, bookended, it's done, start fresh in the afternoon. And I started documenting it, but it took someone seeing another woman who looked like her, another woman that maybe she's in community with, to see it be done and know that, okay, if she can do it, maybe I can do it. You'd be surprised. Like, I do it, 5 people see me, and who are the 5 people that know them and see them that I may not even be privy to and connected to? So if we first start showing up with ourselves and then being bold and loud with that permission, I think that is a start.
Right. Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about your pause framework?
Oh
Can
yeah.
you walk through it?
Yeah. So it's funny because most people think my pause is literally me walking my journal, but for me, it is five. There are 5 pieces. So that first is that mindset that I'm a priority. Who are you around? What limiting beliefs do you have that are centered around rest? Because we're taught we have to earn rest, or our culture even teaches us to hustle and just team no sleep. So we're inundated with all these ideas. So starting to pick away with first, how do you view rest and how do you see yourself? We start talking with the idea of just being a priority. And then I talk to them about asking those questions. How do you feel today? How are you sleeping? Those check ins and asking those questions, and then starting to create your toolbox. Do I pray? Do I journal? Do I meditate? Do I go for my walks? Do I call a friend? Do I have my favorite playlist when I'm mad? Because that is a tool. My mad playlist, I got my I need to cry playlist. We all have our playlist. Music is powerful. And so your self care and your pause will look different. My pause may look like one thing, Dr. Keisha's may, Felicia's may. Everyone's going to look different because it's personal, but it's powerful. And then we talk about boundaries because that's important. What are your boundaries around your time? Are you overwhelming yourself? Are you overscheduling? Are you showing up in places when you know you need to be at home resting? And so you're showing up at 40% because you couldn't say no. Because no is a hard thing. We're not taught to say no. And when we do say no, we feel guilty. And so even having those conversations, and then talking about just the act of being present, because I do teach mindfulness, bringing that in, simple tools, being aware of your breath, being aware of your senses around you, because we're constantly thinking about the next that we miss what's happening now. And that causes some anxiety when we're so quick to think about, okay, well, I need to do this in the next 6 months, or this has to get done. We're always in this sense of urgency, like we're on fire. And I saw a quote that said, if you want to beat burnout, stop acting like everything's on fire. And I was like, you know what? That is true. You think about cooking. You don't cook everything on high because it's going to burn. So we can like turn the knobs down. Maybe I'm high in parenting right now. Maybe my kids really need me. I need to turn down the knob on what I'm doing in business or where my attention is. Maybe I need to volunteer a little less because I'm needed over here. And knowing that that's okay. I do not believe that there's ever even balance. I think balance is a myth. You're going to have to show up in different spaces at different times, but teaching women that it's okay to have to reshift and reassess. And so those are all the things that are combined in my pause for that framework.
I love that. I love that. I think the education is the biggest part. We've modeled what we've seen, and what we've seen has been based on necessity for so long, and showing women that there is another way, specifically Black women, that it is okay to not be everything for everyone. And as we've been talking and building and moving through this day and age, the importance of community. And once we really establish our community, we won't have to be everything for everyone, because we'll have people around us who can be this thing for everyone and this thing for everyone, and someone who can be this thing. And then I can really just be in the spot that I'm really supposed to be in and do the thing well that I'm supposed to be doing well over here, and know that I have support and encouragement and engagement from the other women that I'm in community with. And so I think that one of the things that we've been missing, and that this time calls for, I keep saying it and I'm going to keep saying it, this time calls for community, and it calls for us to rely on one another and to walk in our strengths reliably.
Right.
So whatever it is that you're doing, that you're supposed to be doing, do that, but do that thing well so that you benefit and those around you benefit from it. And then you can benefit from what they're doing well. Because if we're all keeping our end of the bargain, right, then all of our needs are met. And so I think that is just really big as we talk about self-care. I think that as I think about my own messaging about self-care, that some of that we need to talk about what the community care also looks like in terms of our self-care, because we are a part of a we. I cannot just be me. I have to be a part of this we. And if we are all taken care of, we'll all be better. So I'll take a tangent in a minute, but another question for you, Miss Asia, I'm so sorry. If you could rewrite or write the story of Black womanhood and strength, what would you want it to say?
Ooh, if I could rewrite the story of Black women and strength, I would want it to say that we have various sides. I feel like as Black women, we are seen as one way, and that is that strong woman, that we can be soft, that we are allowed to rest, and that we can stand in that, and that we can show up from a place of refreshed, like a refreshed place, and that Black women were designed and created to thrive. I feel like we've survived for so long. And like you said, a lot of the things that we were taught and that we learned were out of necessity, but we're now, my goal and my prayer is that we're entering into a space where we're learning how to thrive as Black women, and knowing what that looks like in a very holistic way. So I'm not just thriving in business, I'm thriving in my relationships, I'm thriving mentally, I'm thriving financially, but thriving as a whole woman with all these facets. And part of that is I'm also allowed to step away and refresh and refuel, recharge, and then come back and do the things that I'm called to do, because we are so powerful. And that's why I feel like so many people are intimidated by us. It's because we are powerful and they know that. So I feel like if we could step into that power and know that we're created to thrive and not just survive.
I love that. I think I hear the "and" again, that we have been taught to survive and now we're learning to thrive, and that survival and thriving can coexist.
Yes.
That for so long we had to survive and we didn't focus on thriving. But I think as we move forward, thriving is going to be instrumental in our survival.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those things go together very well. Doctor, I done gave you a title, so I guess, after you can work it in. It's time for that degree, girl.
Right.
Your work is a reminder that peace is not something that we have to wait for, that it is not something that we have to seek permission for, but it's something that we can choose. And for so many Black women, that choice starts with unlearning what we've been taught and learning new things about strength. We are so thankful for you being here with us today, for sharing your insight and your wisdom. Thank you for being with us. And I can't wait to talk to you a little bit more offline.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Asia. Thank you all for listening. You can connect with Asia, pause with Asia Renee. Where?
Yes. So I'm on socials. I am Asia Renee. Website is Asia Renee as well. I like to make it easy. Just know my name. You'll find me. I'm there everywhere. And I love to connect. I always tell people I'm a real person. I like to chat. So if you have questions, like I'm full to talk about you with pausing, books. I love to read, so we can talk about some books, all the things.
Thank you so much. Now, up next, we are continuing this series with another powerful conversation about the realities of Black motherhood and identity. Be sure to spread the spark, share this conversation with everyone you know. We'll see you next time. The best leaders know that strategy happens in real time, in the right room, with the right people. That's why I created Momentum Lab, where creatives and changemakers meet weekly to break down challenges, refine their strategies, and move forward with momentum. If you're ready to sharpen your next move, join us at lab.feliciafordandco.com. Hey, Changemaker, real quick before you go, if today's episode helped you in some way, the best way to thank me is to head over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the channel, and leave a review. I'd also love to connect with you over on social. You can find me at Friends Call Me Fee. Until next time, keep changing the game.